He said we'd talk things out, but then ignored my calls for weeks. That's the silent treatment, a form of emotional punishment. Here's how I stopped begging for answers and found closure on my own. We had been together for almost 2 years. Not perfect, but I thought we were solid. We'd been through rough patches before, and we always talked it out. He always said communication was important to him. He said he valued honesty. So when things got rocky again, when I brought up how distant he'd been, how I felt like I was doing all the emotional labor, I expected resistance, maybe defensiveness, but I expected something. Instead, he said, "Let's take a few days to cool off. Then we will sit down and talk this through like adults." I agreed. I thought that sounded reasonable, but those few days turned into a week, then 2, then 3. At first, I tried to respect his request. I did not text. I did not call. I waited. But the silence started to eat at me. I began replaying our last conversation over and over, dissecting every word, every pause, every facial expression. Had I said something wrong? Had I been too harsh? The uncertainty was unbearable. It felt like being trapped in a room with no doors and no windows, just walls closing in slowly. I broke first. Of course I did. I sent a text, just a simple one. "Hey, I know you said you needed space, but it has been over a week. Can we at least check in?" No response. I waited another 2 days. Then I called. It rang through to voicemail. I left a message, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just want to know where we stand. If you need more time, that is fine. Just let me know you are okay." Nothing. I called again the next day, and the day after that. Each time, the same result. No answer, no callback, no acknowledgement that I even existed. That is when the panic set in. Not the kind that makes you scream or cry, but the kind that makes you question your grip on reality. I started doubting everything. Maybe I had been too demanding. Maybe I had pushed him away. Maybe I was the problem, and this was his way of showing me just how impossible I was. I reached out to his best friend, hoping for some reassurance. "Is he okay? Did something happen?" His friend was vague. "Yeah, he is fine, just dealing with some stuff. Give him time." But I had given him time, weeks of it, and still nothing. When someone you love suddenly cuts you off without explanation, your brain goes into overdrive, trying to figure out what went wrong. You replay every conversation, every argument, searching for the thing you did that made them disappear. You start to believe that if you could just figure it out, if you could just fix it, they would come back. But the truth is, there is nothing to figure out. The silence is not about you. It is about control. I did not see that at first. All I saw was my own desperation. I felt like I was going insane. Every day that passed without a word from him felt like confirmation that I was unworthy of basic human decency. And that is exactly what he wanted. It took a conversation with my sister to start pulling me out of the fog. We were sitting in her kitchen, and I was unloading everything, every unanswered text, every ignored call, every sleepless night. She listened quietly, and then she said something that stopped me cold. "He is punishing you." I stared at her. "What?" "He is punishing you," she repeated. "You set a boundary. You told him you were not happy with how things were going. And instead of dealing with that like an adult, he is making you pay for it by withholding the one thing you need most right now, acknowledgement." I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to say she was wrong, that he was just overwhelmed, that he just needed space. But deep down, I knew she was right, because this was not the first time he had done this. I started to think back to other moments in our relationship, times when I had brought up something that bothered me, something small, like him canceling plans last minute or forgetting something important, and he had gone cold. Not angry, not defensive, just cold. He would stop texting as much, stop calling, stop engaging, and every time I would panic and scramble to smooth things over, to prove I was not mad. And every time, once I backed down, once I apologized for even bringing it up, he would come back, warm again, loving again, like nothing had happened. I had never seen it as manipulation before. I had seen it as him needing time to process, as him being a bad communicator. I had made excuses for him because I loved him, but now I saw it for what it was, a pattern, a way of keeping me in line. When someone deliberately withholds communication to punish or control you, that is manipulation. It is a way of training you to never challenge them, never set boundaries, never advocate for your own needs, because the moment you do, they disappear, and you are left scrambling to earn back their presence. And the cruelest part, they do not even have to do anything. They just have to do nothing. They just sit back and watch you spiral, knowing that the longer they stay silent, the more desperate you become, the more willing you are to accept blame, to apologize for things you did not do, to shrink yourself just to make them come back. I stopped calling. I stopped texting, not because I suddenly found peace, but because I was exhausted. I was tired of chasing someone who clearly did not want to be caught. And then, 3 days later, he texted, "Hey, sorry I have been MIA. Work has been crazy. Want to grab dinner this week?" That was it. No acknowledgement of the weeks of silence. No apology. No explanation. Just a casual invitation as if nothing had happened. I stared at the message, and I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not joy, rage. He thought he could just waltz back in like nothing had happened. He thought I would be so grateful for the crumbs of his attention that I would forget about the weeks of torment. He thought I would say yes. And the scariest part, a part of me wanted to. A part of me wanted to say yes, to pretend it was fine, to go back to the way things were. Because the alternative, ending things, being alone, facing the fact that I had wasted 2 years on someone who treated me like this, felt unbearable. But I did not say yes. I let myself sit with anger. I let myself feel it fully, without trying to rationalize it away. I let myself acknowledge that what he had done was cruel, that it was calculated, that it was designed to make me feel small. And once I let myself feel that, something else became clear. This was not about closure. This was about recognizing that someone who treats you like this is not someone who loves you. Love does not punish. Love does not withhold. Love does not make you beg for basic human decency. I finally responded, not with anger, not with accusations, just a simple, clear boundary. I do not think dinner is a good idea. I need someone who can communicate, even when it is hard. I do not think you are that person. I wish you well. I did not wait for a response. I blocked his number. I blocked him on social media. I deleted our text thread. I removed every trace of him from my phone. And then I cried. Not because I regretted my decision, but because it hurt. Because even when you know you are doing the right thing, it still hurts. Here is what I learned in the weeks and months that followed. The silent treatment is not about you. It is about power. It is about making you so desperate for contact, for acknowledgement, for proof that you still matter, that you will accept anything. And the only way to win is to stop playing. You cannot logic your way out of it. You cannot convince someone to treat you with basic respect if they have already decided you do not deserve it. You cannot earn back their communication by being perfect. The only thing you can do is walk away. But walking away is not as simple as it sounds. Because when someone has trained you to accept silence as punishment, your brain starts to believe that you deserve it. It took months of therapy for me to untangle that belief. Months of sitting with the discomfort of not knowing, of not having closure. And here's what I eventually understood. Closure is not something someone else gives you. Closure is something you give yourself. You do not need them to admit they were wrong. You do not need them to apologize. You just need to decide that you deserve better and then act accordingly. I wish I could say I never looked back, but that is not how it works. For weeks, I felt the pull to reach out, to check in. I felt the ache of missing him, even though I knew the version of him I missed never really existed. But I did not reach out. I did not check his social media. I forced myself to sit with discomfort, to let myself feel the loss without trying to fix it. And slowly, the pull got weaker. The fantasy of who he could have been started to fade, and the reality of who he actually was became clearer. If you are recognizing yourself in my story, I need you to hear this. The silent treatment is not your fault. It is not a reflection of your worth. It is not proof that you are too much or too needy. It is a deliberate tactic used by someone who values control more than connection. And you do not have to wait for them to break the silence. You can choose to walk away. You can choose to give yourself the validation and respect they refused to give you. So here is exactly what I did. Here is how I stopped begging for answers and found closure on my own. First, I stopped reaching out completely. I know that sounds obvious, but it is harder than it sounds. When someone goes silent, every instinct in your body screams at you to fix it. But every time you reach out, you reinforce the pattern. You teach them that silence works. So I stopped. Cold turkey. I deleted his number so I could not call or text in a moment of weakness. I unfollowed him on social media so I would not be tempted to check his posts. I removed every easy avenue of contact, and I sat with discomfort. I let myself feel the urge to reach out, acknowledge it, and then let it pass. Each time I resisted, it got a little easier. Second, I wrote down everything, every instance of the silent treatment, every time he had gone cold after I set a boundary, every time I apologized for something I did not do just to get him to talk to me again, every time I had felt crazy or unworthy because of his refusal to communicate. I wrote it all down, and I kept the list on my phone. Because when the person finally does break the silence, your brain erases all the pain. All you remember is the relief of hearing from them. And that relief makes you vulnerable. It makes you willing to forgive, to give them another chance. But it will not be different. The pattern will repeat. So I kept the list. And whenever I felt the pull to respond, I read it. I force myself to remember the reality, not the fantasy. Third, I stopped justifying his behavior. This was the hardest part, because when you love someone, your brain does everything it can to make their behavior make sense. You tell yourself they are just stressed. They are just bad at communication. But here is the truth. Adults know how to communicate. Adults know that disappearing for weeks without explanation is cruel. He knew what he was doing. He knew I was hurting. And he chose to let me suffer because it gave him power. I had to accept that. Every time I caught myself making an excuse, he was just overwhelmed. I stopped and reframed. He is choosing to punish me for setting a boundary. He's choosing his need for control over my need for respect. It was uncomfortable, but it was also the truth. And the truth was what I needed to finally let go. Fourth, I found other sources of validation. This is critical. One of the reasons the silent treatment is so effective is because it creates a vacuum. When the person who is supposed to care about you suddenly cuts you off, you feel invisible. And your brain, desperate to fill that vacuum, will do anything to get that validation back. You will chase, you will beg, you will shrink yourself, all in the hope that they will acknowledge your existence. But you do not need their validation. So I leaned on my sister. I leaned on my best friend. I went to therapy. I joined an online support group for people who had experienced tactics designed to harm and control. I surrounded myself with people who saw me, who heard me, who validated my reality. And every time I felt the pull to reach out to him, I reached out to them instead. And slowly, I started to believe that I mattered, even if he refused to act like I did. Fifth, I accepted that I would never get closure from him. This was the most painful part, because I wanted answers. I wanted an explanation. I wanted him to acknowledge the pain he had caused. But he was never going to do that, because to do that, he would have to admit that his behavior was wrong. He would have to give up the narrative that I was the problem. So I had to give myself closure. I had to accept that I would never fully understand why he did what he did. I had to decide on my own that what he did was not okay, that I deserved better. I wrote myself a letter. I wrote down everything I wished he would say, every apology, every acknowledgement, every validation. And then I read it to myself. I gave myself the closure I had been waiting for him to give me. It was not the same, but it was enough. Sixth, I rebuilt my sense of self. The silent treatment does not just hurt you in the moment. It erodes your sense of self over time. It makes you doubt your perceptions, your worth, your reality. It makes you believe that you are only valuable when someone else decides you are. I had to unlearn that. I had to rebuild my sense of self from the ground up. I started small. I made decisions for myself without worrying about what he would think. I pursued hobbies I had abandoned. I reconnected with friends I had drifted away from. I reclaimed the parts of myself I had lost in the process of trying to make myself acceptable to him. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version of myself I had been with him, anxious, desperate, constantly walking on eggshells, but the version of myself I had been before him, confidence, whole, enough. Seventh, I recognized the pattern so I would never fall for it again. The silent treatment is not always obvious. It can come from a friend, a parent, a coworker. It can be disguised as needing space or taking time to think, but the pattern is the same. Someone withholds communication to punish or control you. They make you feel invisible, unworthy, desperate. So I learned the signs. I learned what healthy communication looks like. I learned that people who genuinely need space will tell you when they will be back. They will reassure you. They will not leave you hanging in uncertainty. And I learned to trust my gut. If someone's silence feels like punishment rather than self-care, it probably is. Here is what I know now. The silent treatment is not a communication issue. It is a control issue. It is a deliberate choice to make you feel small and desperate. And you cannot fix it by being better, kinder, or more patient. You cannot love someone without treating you with respect. The only thing you can do is refuse to participate, refuse to chase, refuse to beg, refuse to accept silence as an answer, because you deserve someone who communicates even when it is hard. You deserve someone who respects your need for clarity and connection. You deserve someone who sees conflict as an opportunity to grow closer, not as an excuse to punish you. I still think about him sometimes, not with longing, but with distant clarity. I think about the person I was when I was with him, the person who believed love was supposed to hurt, who believed that if I just tried hard enough, I could earn someone's basic respect. And I feel grateful that I am not that person anymore. It was not easy. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done, but it was also one of the most important, because I learned that closure is not something someone else gives you. It is something you claim for yourself. And I learned that the only way to truly move on is to stop waiting for someone else to validate your reality. You have to validate it yourself. You have to decide on your own that what you experienced was real, that what you felt was valid, that you deserved better. And once you do that, the silence stops being a weapon. It stops having power over you. If you are in this situation right now, if you are staring at your phone, waiting for a response that might never come, I want you to hear this. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. What you are experiencing is real, and it is not your fault. The silent treatment is a tactic designed to harm and control. It is designed to make you doubt yourself, to make you believe that you are the problem. But you do not have to accept it. You do not have to keep waiting. You can choose to walk away. You can choose to give yourself the closure they refuse to give you. You can choose to rebuild your sense of self, to reclaim your power, to trust your own reality. It will not be easy. It will hurt. But every time you resist, you get stronger. Every time you choose yourself, you reclaim a piece of your power. And eventually, you will realize that you do not need their acknowledgement. You do not need their validation, because you are enough, all on your own. Listen, I know how hard this is. I know how much it hurts to walk away from someone you love, even when you know they are hurting you. I know how tempting it is to believe that if you just wait a little longer, they will finally see your worth. But here is the truth. They already see it. They just do not care. And that is not a reflection of your value. That is a reflection of their capacity. So stop waiting for them to change. Stop waiting for them to give you the answers you deserve. Start giving those things to yourself. Start building a life where your voice matters, where your needs are met, where your presence is celebrated, not tolerated. You deserve that. You have always deserved that. And the moment you start believing it, everything changes. The silence stops being a prison and starts being a gift, because it gives you the space to finally hear your own voice again, to finally trust yourself again, to finally choose yourself again. And that is where your real power lies, not in making them come back, but in realizing you do not need them to. So if this story resonated with you, if you saw yourself in any part of it, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the more we talk about these patterns, the more we recognize them, the less power they have. And if you are going through this right now, I want you to know you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not too much. You are just dealing with someone who has chosen control over connection. And you have the power to walk away from that. You have the power to choose yourself. And I promise you, the moment you do, you will start to remember who you were before they made you forget. And that person is worth fighting for.